Karoline Leavitt thought she was walking into another routine CNN debate. What she didn't expect was Jasmine Crockett pulling out documents that exposed secrets the White House press secretary never wanted America to see. The moment Crockett started reading from those papers, Leavitt's composed mask cracked completely. What happened in the next 30 seconds left the entire studio stunned and sent shockwaves through Washington that are still reverberating today. This wasn't just another political spat between two ambitious women. This was a calculated assassination of one of Trump's most trusted allies, executed with surgical precision on live television. Crockett had been planning this ambush for months, gathering evidence that would not only destroy Leavitt's career but potentially send her to federal prison. The documents she carried weren't just embarrassing emails. They were proof of criminal activity at the highest levels of government. Before we dive into this explosive showdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss the latest political drama. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. This story has everything: corruption, betrayal, and a spectacular downfall that nobody saw coming. The CNN studio was buzzing with anticipation as host Anderson Cooper prepared for what was supposed to be a standard political roundtable. On one side sat Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, confident in her navy blazer, notes organized neatly before her. Across the table, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas sat quietly, a manila folder closed in front of her, a slight smile playing on her lips. Neither the audience nor Leavitt knew that folder contained information that would turn this debate into a political earthquake. Crockett had spent weeks gathering evidence, and tonight was a moment to strike. The tension was about to explode in ways nobody saw coming. As the cameras rolled live across America, millions of viewers were about to witness one of the most dramatic political confrontations in recent memory. This wasn't just another talking heads debate. This was about to become a career-defining moment for both women, with consequences that would ripple through the highest levels of government. To understand the magnitude of what was about to unfold, you need to know exactly who these two political powerhouses are and why this confrontation matters so much. This wasn't a random matchup. This was a collision between two women who represented completely different visions of American politics, and only one would survive intact. Karoline Leavitt had risen through the conservative ranks like a rocket. At just 27, she'd become the youngest White House press secretary in American history. Her journey started in New Hampshire, where she grew up in a middle-class family before attending St. Anselm College. She cut her teeth working for Trump during his previous administration, then ran for Congress herself in New Hampshire's 1st District. Though she lost that race, Trump noticed her fierce loyalty and sharp communication skills. What made Leavitt particularly dangerous was her ability to connect with young voters who traditionally avoided Republican politics. She understood social media in ways that older conservatives didn't, and she could deliver Trump's message with a fresh face that didn't carry decades of political baggage. Her youth was a weapon, and she wielded it expertly against liberal critics who underestimated her. When Trump returned to the White House, Leavitt was his obvious choice for press secretary. She'd proven herself on Fox News countless times, handling hostile interviews with the confidence of someone twice her age. Her Catholic faith guided her every decision, and she wore her mega credentials like armor. To conservatives, she represented the future, young, articulate, and absolutely fearless when defending Trump. But success had made Leavitt careless. The constant praise from conservative media had inflated her ego and made her believe she was untouchable. She'd started taking shortcuts, bending rules, and making decisions that would have been unthinkable for more experienced politicians. Her youth, once her greatest asset, had become her greatest vulnerability. Leavitt had enemies, and none more formidable than the woman sitting across from her tonight. Jasmine Crockett represents everything the new conservative movement claims to fight against. A 43-year-old civil rights attorney turned congresswoman, Crockett had built her reputation destroying opponents with surgical precision. Born in St. Louis and raised to fight injustice, she'd earned her law degree from the University of Houston and immediately started taking on cases others wouldn't touch. Her legal background made her particularly dangerous in political combat. She knew how to build cases, gather evidence, and present damning information in ways that left opponents with nowhere to hide. During her time as a civil rights lawyer, she'd taken down corrupt police departments, exposed fraudulent businesses, and won settlements that made national headlines. Her courtroom victories had taught her patience. She knew how to wait for the perfect moment to strike. When she was elected to Congress from Texas's 30th District, Democrats knew they had gained a weapon. Crockett didn't just make speeches. She did the homework. While other members of Congress relied on staff to prepare talking points, Crockett dove into document herself, following paper trails and connecting dots that others missed. What made Crockett especially formidable was her understanding of how modern media worked. She knew that in the age of social media, a single devastating moment could destroy careers that took decades to build. She'd watched other politicians make the mistake of going after opponents without proper preparation, only to be embarrassed when their targets fought back with facts. Crockett had been quietly investigating the Trump administration for months, and tonight she was ready to deploy everything she'd discovered. Her target, the young woman who would become the face of Trump's messaging machine. She'd studied Leavitt's every public appearance, looking for contradictions and weak points. She'd filed FOIA requests, cultivated sources, and built a case that would have impressed prosecutors. The stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about two ambitious politicians scoring points. Leavitt represented Trump's attempt to rebrand his movement with young, diverse voices. If Crockett could expose serious problems with Trump's Golden Girl, it would damage the entire administration's credibility and prove that the new generation of conservatives was just as corrupt as the old one. For Crockett, this was about more than politics. It was about accountability. She'd built her career fighting for justice, and she believed Leavitt was hiding information the American people deserved to know. More importantly, she suspected that Leavitt's violations went beyond simple ethics breaches and into criminal territory. The stage was set for a battle that would test everything both women had learned about political warfare. One had youth and Trump's backing. The other had experience and explosive evidence. Only one would walk away with their reputation intact, and Crockett was determined to make sure it was her. Anderson Cooper opened the segment with his usual professional demeanor, completely unaware he was about to moderate one of the most explosive political confrontations of the year. Tonight we're discussing the administration's latest policy initiatives, Cooper began. Let's start with you, Press Secretary Leavitt. How does the White House respond to critics who say transparency has been lacking? Leavitt smiled confidently, launching into her well-practiced talking points. Anderson, this administration has been more transparent than any in recent history. We hold regular briefings, answer tough questions from the press, and President Trump speaks directly to the American people every day. The criticism comes from people who simply don't like our message. It was standard stuff, polished, professional, exactly what everyone expected from the White House's youngest-ever spokesperson. Leavitt looked completely in control, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her voice steady and confident. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't buying it. "That's interesting, Karoline," Crockett interjected, her Texas drawl cutting through the studio. "Because transparency means telling the truth, not just talking a lot. And I'm curious about some specific things you might want to clarify for the American people." The change in atmosphere was immediate and electric. Everyone in the studio could sense that something significant was about to happen. The camera operators adjusted their positions, sensing that this was no longer a routine political discussion. The audience members leaned forward in their seats, their phones already coming out to record what they sensed might be a historic moment. Leavitt's smile faltered slightly. Something in Crockett's tone, too calm, too confident, too prepared, triggered her political instincts. Years of media training had taught her to recognize when an opponent was setting a trap, and every alarm bell in her head was going off right now. "I'm always happy to clarify our positions. Congresswoman, what specifically are you asking about?" Crockett's hand moved to the manila folder in front of her, but she didn't open it yet. She was building tension, like a prosecutor preparing to present evidence to a jury. The folder itself had become a character in the drama. Everyone in the studio was staring at it, wondering what secrets it contained. "Well, let's talk about your role in the administration's communication strategy. You've been very vocal about the importance of honesty and integrity in government. Is that something you personally practice?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Cooper sensed a shift in energy and leaned forward slightly. The studio audience, initially chattering quietly, fell silent. Leavitt's training kicked in. Stay calm, deflect, redirect. Absolutely. Honesty and integrity are the foundations of everything I do. I serve the American people by delivering President Trump's message clearly and truthfully. That's good to hear, Crockett said, finally opening her folder. "Because I have some documents here that raise questions about your commitment to that honesty." Now Leavitt's composure cracked visibly. Her eyes darted to the papers Crockett was pulling out, trying to see what they contained. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I stand by every statement I've made as press secretary." Crockett pulled out the first document, a printed email thread. "These are communications between you and various administration officials. Internal emails that show a very different picture than what you present to the public." The camera zoomed in on Leavitt's face, capturing the moment her confident mask began to slip. Her jaw tightened, and for the first time since the segment began, she looked genuinely concerned. "I can't comment on internal communications," Leavitt said, her voice slightly strained. "Executive privilege protects." "Oh, these aren't privileged," Crockett interrupted smoothly. "These were obtained through proper legal channels. Freedom of Information Act requests, whistleblower disclosures, all completely above board." Cooper jumped in, sensing the explosive potential of the moment. "Congresswoman Crockett, what exactly do these documents show?" Crockett smiled. Not a friendly smile, but the predatory grin of a lawyer who knows she has her opponent cornered. "Well, Anderson, they show a pattern of deliberate misinformation being coordinated at the highest levels. And our young press secretary here isn't just delivering these messages, she's helping craft them." Leavitt's face flushed red. She was losing control of the narrative, and everyone in the studio could feel it. "That's absolutely false. I would never—" "Never what, Karoline?" Crockett pressed. "Never lie to the American people. Never coordinate with outside groups to spread disinformation. Never use your position to benefit your personal political ambitions." Each question hit like a hammer blow. Leavitt was visibly struggling now, her hands gripping the edge of the table. The young woman who'd confidently destroyed Robert De Niro on Fox News was being systematically dismantled by a more experienced opponent. "You're taking things out of context," Leavitt said desperately, "without seeing the full picture." "Oh, I'm happy to provide the full picture," Crockett said, pulling out more papers. "Should we start with your communications with Cambridge Analytica-style data firms? Or maybe the messages about coordinating with state election officials to manage information flow?" The studio erupted in shocked murmurs. Cooper's eyes widened. This was turning into the kind of bombshell interview that wins journalism awards. Leavitt was trapped. She couldn't deny documents she hadn't seen, but she couldn't admit to anything either. Her political training was failing her in the face of Crockett's methodical assault. "I think we need to see these documents before—" Leavitt started. "You'll see them," Crockett cut her off. "America will see them. But first, I want to hear you explain something very specific." The tension in the studio was suffocating. Even the camera operators had stopped moving, sensing they were capturing something historic. Crockett held up a single sheet of paper. "This is an email from you to the RNC Data Director, dated 3 weeks before the election. Would you like to read it aloud, or shall I?" Leavitt's composure finally shattered completely. "I will not participate in this ambush. This is exactly the kind of gotcha journalism that Americans are sick of." She was shouting now, her carefully maintained professional image crumbling in real time. The 27-year-old who'd looked so poised moments earlier was having a complete meltdown on live television. "Truth isn't an ambush, Karoline," Crockett said calmly. "It's just truth. What happened next will be replayed on every news channel and social media platform for weeks." Jasmine Crockett, with the calm precision of a surgeon, began to methodically destroy everything Karoline Leavitt had built. "Let me read this email for our viewers," Crockett said, her voice steady as Leavitt continued to fume across the table. "This is from Karoline Leavitt's official White House email account, sent to RNC Data Director Mike Chen." She cleared her throat and began reading. "Mike, we need to coordinate the messaging around the Michigan situation. The real numbers aren't good for us, but we can spin this if we control the narrative from day one. I'm prepared to say whatever you need me to say at tomorrow's briefing. The press won't fact-check in real time, and by the time they do, the story will be set." The silence in the studio was deafening. Even Anderson Cooper, a veteran of countless political interviews, looked stunned by what he'd just heard. Leavitt's face had gone from red to pale white. That's taken completely out of context," she stammered. You don't understand the full situation. Oh, I understand perfectly, Crockett continued, pulling out another document. Should we talk about this message to your deputy? Sarah, make sure the fact-checkers don't get the Michigan data until after Thursday's news cycle. By then we'll have moved on to the border story. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. Leavitt was gripping the table so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The young woman who'd made her reputation on her honesty and integrity was being exposed as a calculating political operative willing to mislead the American people. This is a deliberate hit job. Leavitt shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. You're trying to destroy me because you can't handle that we won. But Crockett wasn't finished. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and she had enough ammunition to bury Leavitt completely. Let's talk about your personal enrichment from your position, Crockett said, producing yet another document. This is a contract between KL Communications LLC. That's your company, isn't it, Karoline? And several pro-Trump PACs. You've been getting paid by outside groups while serving as press secretary. Isn't that a violation of federal ethics rules? The accusation hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Cooper leaned forward, his journalistic instincts fully engaged. Press Secretary Leavitt, is this true? Have you been receiving payment from political organizations while serving in your official capacity? Leavitt's world was collapsing in real time. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built, was crumbling under Crockett's methodical assault. There are proper channels. Everything was approved. By whom? Crockett pressed. Because according to the Office of Government Ethics, no such approval was ever filed. In fact, they had no knowledge of these payments until my office brought them to their attention last week. The implications were staggering. If true, Leavitt hadn't just misled the press. She potentially violated federal law. Her career wouldn't just be damaged. It could be over entirely. But Crockett saved a most devastating revelation for last. And then there's this, she said, holding up a final document. Internal polling data that you shared with outside groups, data that was classified and specifically marked as not for distribution. Karoline, you didn't just mislead the American people. You potentially compromised national security to help your political allies. That was the final straw. Leavitt exploded. This is insane, she screamed, standing up from her chair. You're manufacturing a scandal because you can't accept that President Trump has surrounded himself with competent people. I have done nothing wrong. Her voice was shaking with rage and what sounded like fear. The composed, professional image she cultivated was completely gone, replaced by a young woman having an emotional breakdown on national television. Sit down, Karoline, Crockett said quietly. You're only making this worse for yourself. I will not be lectured by someone who spent her entire career attacking everything I believe in. Leavitt shot back. You want to destroy me because I represent everything you hate about America. Cooper tried to regain control of the segment. Let's all take a breath here. No. Leavitt interrupted. I want to see these supposed documents. I want to verify their authenticity. Anyone can fake emails. Crockett smiled coldly. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. She reached into her folder one more time and pulled out an official-looking document with government seals. This is a letter from the FBI confirming they verified the authenticity of all these communications as part of an ongoing investigation. They've been watching you for months, Karoline. The words hit Leavitt like a physical blow. Her legs seemed to give out, and she collapsed back into her chair, her face a mask of shock and terror. That's right, Crockett continued remorselessly. While you've been playing press secretary, the FBI has been building a case. Federal ethics violations, potential securities fraud, misuse of classified information. The only question now is whether you'll resign before you're indicted, or whether you'll force the president to fire you. Leavitt sat in stunned silence, all fight gone out of her. The studio was absolutely quiet except for the hum of cameras capturing her complete destruction. Cooper finally found his voice. Congresswoman Crockett, you're saying there's an active federal investigation into the White House press secretary. I'm saying that Karoline Leavitt has been living on borrowed time, Crockett replied. And that time just ran out. Leavitt tried one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. This is all lies, she whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Political persecution. The truth isn't persecution, Karoline, Crockett said firmly. It's just the truth. And the truth is that you've been lying to the American people from day one. The segment ended with Leavitt sitting in shocked silence, her career in ruins, while Crockett sat calmly organizing her papers, a prosecutor who had just delivered a perfect closing argument. The immediate aftermath of the CNN confrontation was unlike anything political observers had seen in years. Within minutes of the show ending, social media exploded with reactions that would reshape the political landscape for months to come. #Leavitt Exposed began trending on Twitter before Anderson Cooper had even finished his closing remarks. The hashtag was joined by #CNN Bombshell, #Crockett Destroys, and #White House Scandal as millions of Americans processed what they'd just witnessed. The video clips were being shared faster than Twitter servers could process them. Conservative Twitter tried desperately to control the damage. Trump supporters initially claimed the documents were fake, but their arguments grew weaker as legitimate news organizations began confirming Crockett's revelations. The usual army of mega influencers found themselves defending the indefensible, and many simply went silent rather than tried to spin what everyone had seen with their own eyes. Fox News, usually quick to defend Trump administration officials, was notably quiet in the hours following the broadcast. Behind the scenes, producers were frantically trying to decide how to cover a story that made one of their favorite guests look like a criminal. The network's evening shows either ignored the story entirely or covered it with obvious reluctance. Liberal Twitter, meanwhile, was in full celebration mode. Video clips of Leavitt's meltdown were shared thousands of times per minute. The moment when she shouted, "This is insane," became an instant meme, with users adding their own captions to capture her wild-eyed expression of panic. Late-night comedy writers were already crafting jokes that would dominate the cultural conversation for weeks. International media picked up the story within hours. The BBC ran it as their lead story, framing it as evidence of continued chaos in the Trump administration. European newspapers used it to illustrate American political dysfunction. The story was becoming a global embarrassment for the United States. But the real fireworks were happening behind the scenes in Washington, where panic was spreading through Republican circles like wildfire. Within 30 minutes of the show ending, Karoline Leavitt's phone was buzzing nonstop. White House Chief of Staff calls, Trump's personal lawyers, Republican operatives. Everyone wanted to know if Crockett's accusations were true and how bad the damage would be. The first official response came not from Leavitt or the White House, but from the FBI. In an unprecedented move, they issued a statement confirming that an investigation into potential ethics violations by current and former White House personnel was indeed ongoing. They wouldn't confirm specific targets, but the timing made it clear they were talking about Leavitt. Trump himself remained uncharacteristically silent for the first few hours. Usually quick to defend his allies on Truth Social, the president seemed to be weighing his options. When he finally posted, it was a carefully worded statement that created distance. All White House personnel are expected to maintain the highest ethical standards. Any violations will be dealt with appropriately. The message was clear. Leavitt was on her own. News organizations that had been caught off guard by Crockett's revelation scrambled to catch up. CNN immediately assigned their investigative team to verify and expand on the documents. The Washington Post and New York Times, which had been pursuing similar stories for months, accelerated their own reporting. By morning, new details were emerging that made Leavitt's situation even worse. The Wall Street Journal reported that her consulting company had received over $400,000 from pro-Trump PACs while she served as press secretary. The Associated Press confirmed that classified polling data had indeed been shared with outside groups. Politico revealed that the Office of Government Ethics had opened a formal investigation weeks earlier. The political implications were staggering. Republicans who had pointed to Leavitt as a future of their party suddenly found themselves defending someone who appeared to have violated the most basic ethical standards. Democrats smelled blood in the water and began calling for congressional investigations. Jasmine Crockett, meanwhile, became an overnight sensation among progressives. Her methodical destruction of Leavitt was being compared to the best moments of congressional hearings. Fundraising emails from Democratic candidates began featuring her performance within hours. Last night, we saw what real accountability looks like, one Democratic strategist told CNN. Jasmine Crockett did what journalists should have been doing all along, holding this administration's feet to the fire with actual evidence. But Crockett's triumph came with risks too. By evening, conservative media had pivoted from defending Leavitt to attacking Crockett. Fox News ran segments questioning how she had obtained the documents and whether her methods were ethical. Talk radio hosts accused her of conducting a political assassination and called for investigations into her own conduct. The next morning brought the inevitable conclusion. At 6:47 a.m. Eastern Time, Karoline Leavitt posted a resignation letter on her social media accounts. After much prayer and consideration, I have decided to step down from my role as White House press secretary to focus on addressing these false allegations and clearing my name. I am proud of my service to President Trump and the American people. The letter was classic political damage control, admitting nothing while creating space for a legal defense. But nobody was buying it. Leavitt's career as a rising star of conservative politics was over, destroyed in a single television appearance. Trump accepted her resignation with a brief statement praising her dedication and service while announcing that Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews would serve as interim spokesperson. The transition was handled so smoothly that it was clear the White House had been preparing for this outcome. The broader implications extended far beyond one young woman's ruined career. Leavitt had been a symbol of Trump's attempt to modernize his movement and appeal to younger voters. Her downfall raised serious questions about the administration's vetting processes and ethical standards. Congressional Republicans found themselves in an impossible position. They couldn't defend Leavitt's apparent violations, but they also couldn't afford to seem like they were abandoning Trump. The careful balance they'd maintained between party loyalty and ethical governance was crumbling. For Democrats, Crockett's performance provided a roadmap for how to effectively challenge the Trump administration. Instead of emotional arguments or partisan attacks, she had used methodical fact-gathering and careful presentation to achieve devastating results. Legal experts began speculating about Leavitt's potential criminal exposure. Ethics violations could result in fines and employment restrictions, but if prosecutors could prove she knowingly shared classified information for personal gain, she could face serious prison time. The story also raised uncomfortable questions about the media's role. Why had it taken a congressional representative to expose information that investigative journalists should have uncovered? The documents Crockett presented were obtained through standard legal processes available to any reporter. Cable news shows spent days analyzing the confrontation frame by frame. Body language experts dissected Leavitt's reactions. Legal analysts debated the strength of potential criminal cases. Political strategists argued about long-term implications for both parties. Late-night comedians had a field day with the footage. Leavitt's "This is insane" outburst became a viral soundbite used in countless memes and parody videos. Her complete meltdown provided material for weeks of comedy shows. But perhaps the most significant long-term impact was on young conservatives who had seen Leavitt as a role model. Her rise had inspired thousands of young women to consider careers in Republican politics. Her dramatic fall sent a different message about the costs of blind loyalty and ethical shortcuts. 3 weeks after the CNN confrontation, federal prosecutors announced they were indeed pursuing charges against Leavitt for ethics violations and potential misuse of classified information. She hired a top Washington legal team and prepared for a fight that would likely take years to resolve. Jasmine Crockett, meanwhile, was already planning her next target. In interviews following her triumph, she made it clear that this was just the beginning of her campaign for accountability. "Democracy only works when people in power tell the truth," she said during a victory lap appearance on MSNBC. "If they won't do it voluntarily, then we need to make them do it with facts and evidence." The message was clear. Other Trump officials should be looking over their shoulders because Crockett was just getting started. The Leavitt affair became a case study in modern political warfare, how careful preparation, strategic timing, and devastating evidence could destroy even the most promising career in a matter of minutes. It showed that in the age of social media and 24-hour news cycles, there was nowhere to hide from the truth. For viewers who witnessed a confrontation, it was a reminder that behind all the political theater and partisan talking points, real accountability was still possible. Sometimes it just took the right person with the right evidence at the right moment to make it happen. The question now was whether this would be an isolated incident or the beginning of a new era of political transparency. Either way, Karoline Leavitt's political career was over, and Jasmine Crockett had established herself as one of the most feared investigators in Washington. The story serves as a crucial lesson for anyone in public life. In an era of digital communications and persistent investigators, the truth always has a way of coming out. And when it does, no amount of spin or deflection can save you from the consequences of your choices. Thanks for watching this incredible political showdown. If you enjoyed seeing how Jasmine Crockett completely dismantled Karoline Leavitt's career in real time, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more explosive political content. We'll continue following this story as it develops, and trust me, there are more bombshells coming that will shake Washington to its core. The Leavitt scandal is just the tip of the iceberg. Our sources tell us that Crockett has similar evidence on at least 3 other high-ranking Trump officials, and she's planning to release it strategically over the coming weeks. This could be the beginning of the biggest political scandal since Watergate. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the action, and let us know in the comments, what other Trump officials do you think Crockett should investigate next? Should Leavitt go to prison for her crimes? And do you think this will finally bring down the Trump administration? Your opinions matter to us, and we read every single comment. Don't forget to share this video with everyone you know. They need to see how real accountability works in Washington. And if you want even more exclusive political content, check out our membership program where we break down stories like this in even more detail. See you in the next video, where we'll have the latest updates on the FBI investigation and what it means for Trump's presidency.